Gender Talk 211. My name is Eva Lopa, and I am your host. From Ivy League schools to conflict resolution at only 25 years old, Esther Soma has an impressive resume that includes Yale and Oxford. Let's get to know her more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time to be here. I think it's our first interview.
Yes, it is.
Right? I've known you for...
No, actually, it's not our first.
Really?
You did a Gender Talk 2-on-1 show at Radio 1.
2020? Was it 2020?
2021. Yeah, when I was still at Yale.
Welcome again.
Thank you. I was like,
Thank
it
you
is
for
enough
reminding me.
Yes.
No, I'm really happy to have you here. I mean, we've known each other for a minute now, but we haven't had a deep conversation. I just know Esther Soma, Yale, women, Oxford, empowerment, peace building. So you have such an extensive resume at such a young age. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
Cool. So I'm Esther, as you said, Yangi Soma. I am a proud young South Sudanese. I was born in Kenya, grew up in Kenya, but to South Sudanese parents. And they always told us, get all the education and come back and build your country. So I'm the youngest of my siblings, and I saw my siblings after their studies make their way to Juba, step by step. So I knew that after studies, South Sudan is a place
to be.
Home. Yes, you come back home. You come back home and build home. So I did my immediate high school, my primary school to beginning of high school in Kenya. Then after Kenya, I went to South Africa for 2 years. There's an academy called the African Leadership Academy. So the goal is to develop the next generation of African leaders, and then they help you apply to universities outside. So while I was there, I decided to apply to Yale. I got in, did a Bachelor of Arts in Global Affairs. That was good.
That was amazing. I mean, Yale is an Ivy League school.
It is.
I think you're the only person I know. What was the Yale experience like? Is it everything we see on TV?
I think ALA, African Leadership Academy, prepared me for Yale because I feel like if I went directly from high school in Kenya to Yale, it would have been a very big culture shock. So going to school in South Africa and being with students from all over Africa mentally prepared me for being with people from diverse backgrounds. Yeah. And Yale was a place where you have the best from all over the world, you know? So you're used to being the smart one in your class, but you're meeting the smartest from all the continents,
all around the world.
But what I did appreciate was I appreciated the sense of support they give to their undergraduates. Yeah, I had so much support. The International Students Office was there. We have college systems. So my college dean was very supportive. Then you're a part of, in your college, you have a freshman counselor who like checks up on you and helps you settle in. So there are many systems in place that just help you adapt and settle in. But I adapted. I think the Christian community was really supportive, was great for me. The international students community, the African students community was just the best. Out there, you're not like Kenyan, Zimbabwean, Zambia. No, you're just Africans. Yeah. Yes. And navigating America, that was also when I first was exposed to issues of race, really seriously. And I was grateful for my bringing in on the continent. Yes. Because there's a strong sense of identity that you have when you are around your own. In a way, and you don't have to navigate thinking about the color of your skin. Actually, one of my friends put it this way: when I'm in the US, I think about the color of my skin and the spaces I occupy. But when I come back to Kenya or South Sudan, it's about my gender. I think about my womanhood.
What a way to put it.
And it's true, because that's the I would say the segregation point, right. You know, and a lot of how you navigate is influenced by either your gender on the continent, but outside it's more of the color of your skin. Yeah.
No, it sounds like you had a really amazing experience, but also very informative.
Yes.
Experience, new cultures, and so on. So now you finish with Yale, you come back home to Juba. What happens next?
So coming to Juba was a leap of faith. I used to come back every year since my family moved back in 2012. So my first experience in Juba was not the best. I was held up at the airport. They said I'm not South Sudanese. Mom was like, this is my daughter. It was a mess. And I remember they asked me, Payam taki shunu. And I was like, Payam de shunu.
Oh.
I didn't know what Payam was. I knew my county, I knew my state, but I didn't
Payam was new.
I never had the word Payam, And so I remember being held up for about an hour. And it's like this constant sense of trying to prove your identity.
Yes.
And so that left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But it just made me aware that in South Sudan, unfortunately, another sphere you have to be conscious of navigating is tribes. And I was just like, where is this coming from? Because I don't even know some names where they're from in South Sudan.
Right.
Because growing up in Nairobi, it was the Sudanese Women Association in Nairobi, and all the South Sudanese would gather there, regardless of tribes. So you wouldn't really know.
It's also a new experience because outside you experience the race part, and then also being a woman, the gender aspect. But now there's this tribes aspect, brand new.
And you may not fully know it or understand it well. So I think after that experience, I would only come to South Sudan during the holidays. I'd do internships here and there. There are things I would see gendered, but I just ignore because I'm like, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. There's nothing I can do about it. But now, 2016, when I was done with my undergraduate, I wanted to come, but mom and dad were like, no, don't come. Go back to the US.
Not time.
Yes. And so I went back. I could be there for a year. So I worked in DC for a year, worked on South Sudanese issues. But I remember thinking I would go for so many meetings with so many people who claimed to be experts on South Sudan, but they'd never been
to South Sudan. Not even South Sudanese.
No.
Yeah.
And someone is like, they'd give you their kind of expert on South Sudan. And I was just like, Esther, you're going to be like these people. If you don't live there, if you don't, yes, your family is there. If you don't have the experience of living in your country, and after all, it's the only citizenship you have. You are South Sudanese, So because of that, I was like, I'm going to come. But adjusting was also adjusting. They're growing pains to adjusting. So I came first to Nairobi, October of 2017. And no, actually August, September. And I was about a month in Nairobi and I would apply for jobs online. But my big brother would tell me, hey, your job is in Juba, just come. And so I decided to take the leap. I came and the next day after I arrived, I printed out my CV and I just dropped it in organizations. Yeah, I'd knock on doors, talk to the watchman. Well, if they let me go in, meet the HR, give it to them.
Don't tell me that's how you got into UN Women.
Let me tell you,
I don't believe it. Don't believe it. Do you know how difficult it is?
I'm actually serious. I just dropped my CV around. But what happened?
I think what happened is they saw Yale and they said, yes, this is the one.
Well, I do not know how my CV had landed on Fumi's desk. She was the director of UN Women then. But I was invited for a meeting of women. And so I showed up for this meeting. I was wondering, how did they get my details?
Hear about me.
Yeah,
yes.
So I was invited for the meeting and it was mainly older women or mid to old. I was the youngest woman in the room actually. So I walked in at that time and they were working on a statement. They were working to meet the Troika ambassadors. Actually, so they were having a discussion and I said, you know what? I can help by typing for you. So I literally just got the laptop and I started typing.
The statement itself.
Yes, whatever they were saying, I was just consolidating it. And I was like, I can help in this way. I may not fully know the experiences, but I can help in this way. So I started typing for them. And then as they were planning for the meeting, they asked me to present it to them, for them. And I was like, I just got it. It's like, no, you wrote it for us. You captured our views well. So please present it for us to the ambassadors. And
at that time, you still don't have a job.
I don't have a job.
Women.
No. But UN Women Director called me into her office. God bless her heart for me. She just called me and said, I want you to work for me. That was it. From that interaction, and as I was telling you earlier, I was in a training. I've been doing a training for young women the last 2 days.
Yes.
And one of the things I was telling them, keep knocking on doors, and when the door opens, give it your best.
Yes.
So I walked in, I was like, I can contribute in this way. I gave it my best.
Even though it's not anything official.
Nope.
This could be something.
Yes.
You never
and
know.
So I didn't even have that in mind, that this could be something.
You were just trying to be helpful.
I was literally just trying to be helpful and trying to support the peace process in South Sudan in whatever way I can, because they were meeting the ambassadors.
Yes.
And so I wrote it up for them, and for me, I was like, I want you to work for me. I'll give you a consultancy to see how we can support the women in the peace process. And so that's how my journey in Women started.
Amazing.
Yeah, and early 2018, you remember I was sending emails everywhere?
Yes.
So I had sent Rita an email, Rita of Eve Organization. I'd sent her an email, and at that time she didn't have any opportunities. But sometime in January, she's like, oh, we're having a women's meeting in Entebbe. Would you like to come for this and be our rapporteur? So I was like, okay, that's taking notes. I'm happy to do that. So I was like, sure, I'd love to come. So early January, I went to Entebbe. I was with the women. They were coming up with their positions because they were traveling to Addis for the peace talks. I think that was February 2018. So I was there helping them write their points.
Yeah.
And all the delegates were like, you know, with all this, the peace process is very fast-paced. We need people to be running behind the scenes for us. So we need a technical support unit. So they selected 5 women and me as the young girl to go and support them to do the running up and down and writing for them.
Amazing. So this is how you became a part of the peace process.
Exactly.
As an observer.
Actually, at that point, we were more of called the technical support team. And we were not the delegates in the room, but we were supporting the delegates. But while we were there, they gave some of us observer status to now go in and see. But the official delegates were the delegates. We were their engine behind the scenes. So literally, that's how I ended up at the talks, taking notes.
Okay, as much as you're on the technical team, but I'm assuming you are receiving a lot of information.
Yes.
Of what is happening in details of the negotiations. What was the most significant part, or what kind of information were you receiving?
So one, I would say the documents the delegates were receiving. So they would get the various positions, and they'd be given a document. You have just the night to look at the document, and the next day you have to present your views.
Because it's sessions every day.
Yes, every day. And it's intense. So the delegates are mentally taxed. They were exhausted, but they have to be awake to engage. So Ria William, I remember she came in as part of the Youth Civil Society Support Team. And there was some number of young men in civil society, and we would call ourselves the night crew, midnight crew. So we would work through the night. So you're looking at these documents here and you say, this is an opportunity to shape the future of my country.
Yes.
And so you're not just working on them, but it's a greater significance to it. So my perspective was from a gender lens, and I'm like, okay, how do we ensure the rights of women and girls are protected in the coming, in the resulting agreement? How can we ensure that their rights are protected? So we would review them through the night, hand it back to them. But also now the second bit was meeting the allies. So when we'd hand over the documents at 5 a.m., we'd go nap until 10, then wake up and now go to the African Union, go to South African Embassy, you just go to all the embassies that you think are, would be empathetic to the situation of South Sudanese, and you have to map them. So it's like you're doing a power analysis. I was just like 24, 25 at this point. It's my first time in a fast-paced peace process. I've never been here.
Oh, I actually did not know you were that young, but I can believe that they selected you because you've always been well-spoken, regardless of where you are.
Yeah.
I think the first time I met you, it was an event. It was an event. I was moderating a panel, I think for youth and women or something. And you were in just the middle of all these powerful women and running the entire show. So I believe it.
Thank you, Eva.
And I'm glad you were there to represent.
Yeah, I would say I think to young people, just take whatever space you're in and just give it your best. Because when I first came, I didn't jump to take the mic. Yes, I knew I could probably take the mic, but who has given me the legitimacy? I felt like I didn't have the legitimacy to
You didn't do the work.
Yes, I hadn't done the work. And there were people who were doing the work.
Yes.
And so my best way to support them was behind my laptop. So I can write, I will help you with the writing, I will help you consolidate your views, and I will give you the one pager to present, you know? And so find ways of being helpful and useful.
Builds up your portfolio.
And it builds you up. Doors will open, provided you give whatever you're doing your best. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you took that path.
I did.
Which brings me to my next point. You spoke about while you were at the peace process negotiations, you were more focused on women or gender.
Gender, but also youth and civil society positions.
Gender, youth, great. Tell me what happened with gender. I know 35% was negotiated, which previously was 25% from, I think, CPA time. How did the women get to 35%? So remember that meeting I told you in Entebbe, early of 2018? Yes.
So in that meeting, the women asked themselves, what do we want? And so they came up with a list of what they called red lines and green lines. So there were 10 things that they said, this we absolutely do not want to see in the peace agreement. And that was like, oh, we don't want people convicted of crimes before as leaders, or we don't want, what are some of the other red lines? That's one I just remember. And then some of the green lines were like, we want people of high moral standing as leaders. We want a 50-50 of, want a 50% gender quota in the peace agreement. So they had written what they wanted. But I remember the conversation we were having about the 50%. This was before, mind you, the peace talks. Prior preparation is important. So in that preparation, the discussion in the room, remember I was a rapporteur, taking notes for them. So as I was taking notes for them, the discussion that was had in the room was, we would want to get to 35%. But if we ask for 35%, it will not be granted.
So you have to ask for higher.
Let's ask for higher. So they were like, let's ask for 50%.
It's a good strategy.
And we push as much as possible to see if we can land at the 35%. So our document was clear 50%. And these documents were shared with the African Union. It was shared with the IGAD in advance. You share your position in advance so that people know what you're calling for as you're going into the talks. Now, I wasn't in the room when the discussion was taking place. But the one thing I remember when the delegates came out was that when that was brought forward, it was the one time all the men in the room came together. They were like, no, there was a pushback. Really? And mind you, they're different. They're from different political parties. These are warring parties. But when that was brought to the table, they were all like, no, we're not pushing for
Why
this.
do you think that happens? Because I remember reading about the 25% negotiations during CPA, the Naivasha agreement. And also apparently in that room, the men, like cartoon men collectively came together and said, this is not happening. And that's why I think the 25% was never included in the CPA. But later, I think with the transitional constitution, that's where it was inserted. Why does that happen? How do men collectively come every time to stand against what women demand for and also what they deserve?
It's about power. No one lets go of power easily. It's all about power. Who has the power, you know? And power is not given to you.
Yes.
You have to take it. And it's not easy, it's not comfortable. Power, as I would say, patriarchy, has afforded men certain privileges. And for them, this sense of equality politically, they were not going to accept it. Yeah. Not all men obviously were of the same mindset, but it's a power. It's all about power. So when that happened, the women had already talked to the women in civil society had talked to women in political parties to also do the backing up. So when the women in civil society brought it up, 50%, another called for 75%, pushing it. But because the women in civil society and the women in political parties were speaking the same language, they had to listen. And that boils down to, what can we agree on? We may not always agree on everything, but what are the bare minimum we can agree on? Whether you're in a political party or in civil society, you're still a woman. And actually, the push for the 35% would benefit the women in political parties more.
Correct.
Not the women in civil society more, It was the women in civil society pushing for the women in political parties. So they understood that this was also for their good. And one of the women in political parties stood up, and mind you, this is explanation from like people who were in the room and how I was hearing it. And she said, okay, I think if I remember correctly, it was Madame Award. She said, okay, let's go for 35%. And I think she appealed because I think the SPLM also has a quota. SPLA has a quota of 35%. And so I think she also appealed to that. And there was an acceptance of it, because it's already one of the leading political parties, like there's already an acceptance of it also. So the strategy in that way was, what can they relate to? What have they already accepted? What are we pushing for, and what do we want? So the culmination of voices of women in civil society, women in political parties, their culmination of voices led to that final acceptance. So when I get a bit irritated when I hear people say, oh, we gave you the 35%. No,
right.
It wasn't given. Women fought for that. They demanded
absolutely.
for it. And that doesn't limit that women should only occupy 35%. No, we can occupy up to 50, 60, 70.
That was going to be my next question. What do you think women need to do more of, or what can we as women do to get to 50 or even more than 50%?
There are various steps we need to take. First of all, how can we empower young women to get into more political spaces? Even as I say that, I look at myself, and I'm not in a political party. I'm on the outside, but I ask myself, why don't I feel comfortable to go into political spaces? Partly you ask yourself, oh, do I really want to go in right now? How will that affect my career?
Yeah.
So part of me is like, the environment doesn't seem as conducive. So the first thing would be, I would say, the political parties, if they want to get more women or more young people, let them make the conditions more conducive.
Better.
When are they having their meetings? Are people able to attend their meetings? In my training this week, one of the young leaders who's very vocal, incredible young woman, she said people are having meetings at midnight at Pyramid. I live in Gure. I don't have a car. I want to participate, but decisions are being made at that time at Pyramid.
Right.
So I look at my personal safety and I'm like, no. So political parties, especially as they're thinking about elections, they need to make themselves more appealing for young people and young women and women to join. And they can't neglect women first, because women make more than half of the population. 100%. If you want the votes, make it conducive for women to also join in and young women to join. Now that was in the political parties. For the youth, on how they can, or youth and women, on how we can join political spaces more, I would say more intentional capacity building for politics, yeah? So we do a lot of capacity building trainings, whether it's economic activities and all, but what skills do women need to enter politics or to be in politics? Well, right. They need to be better public speakers. What skills do they feel like they like? They need to be able to table motions, They need to be able to communicate their ideas in writing. They need to be able to negotiate with different actors. How are we building the skills in women for them to feel more confident to engage in the spaces? So for me, it's more of an intentional skills building for politics that will make people feel more confident to get into politics. Because we also see an environment where we put some women there, but we don't give them the support. Now, I'm not saying that we should not send women, whether they're qualified or not. women need to be there. Representation matters.
Absolutely.
Let's get them there and let's work with them.
Do more to bring
They're
more
there,
women.
yes. And the ones who are there, let us support them for them to be able to excel. Because what then happens when we say, oh, you brought this woman, what has she done? What are they doing? She's quiet in the halls. So what skills gap what skills are missing that we need to build for women to feel more confident in these spaces, to express themselves and to push for the rights of the citizens that they're representing. Now, mind you, we've not had elections in this country.
True.
And so there's not really been that opportunity for citizens to really speak up and say, this is who we want to represent us. But I trust we will get there. I trust we will get there. And that will be an opportunity for women to get into political spaces. So let's be ready. Let's prepare ourselves for that time.
You mentioned women cannot be neglected. There's a question that lingers around my mind from time to time. Do women also neglect other women? Because the women, there are women within the informal sector or women of communities, women that are not with you in the city, that have different issues wherever they are. Are we consulting all women? Are we speaking for all women? What are your thoughts?
No, we're not. We're not speaking for all. And I will say that being especially in the civil society and political spaces, one of the things I say is there's a lot of Juba centrism, you know? So people will congregate in Juba, have meetings in Juba, but do we take time to go to the states and hear what women in the states are saying? Are we taking time to understand what challenges they're facing? I remember while I was at UN Women, there was a time I traveled to a place called Wulu in Lake States. And it was my first time there, and we were talking about like their right to economic activity or their right to own land. And one of the women asked me, she said, you're speaking to me about right to own land. I don't even have right to my own body. And that crushed me. That really crushed me, because some of the issues that we're pushing for, some issues are context specific.
Yes.
And we really need to see how we're supporting the context specific issues. Last year, September, I went to Yambio and I was speaking to a mix of young women, older women, and actually people in men in civil society. And it was a training I was giving on policy for change, like figuring out policy problems and how to address them. And I was asking them, like, have you heard of the transitional justice process that is supposed to happen, or the constitution making process? They had no idea. And mind you, these were the civil society actors. They had no idea that this was supposed to happen or this was coming up. But then one of the things I also picked up is that they were pushing for a girl child education bill in the state. In Juba, I had never heard of that, you know?
Right.
But this was something that I found so incredible, that for them was a need in their community, and they were actively pushing.
An immediate and direct need.
Yes. So I think we need to do better at just knowing what our fellow sisters in the States are doing.
Yes.
We may not all go, but if we can just find ways of feeding information. Oftentimes, I feel like we think of networking as outside South Sudan, within Juba and outside, or we have partners in Uganda, in Kenya, in New York, we're going for meetings there, but like, do we have those networks within our own country, you know, and how are we actively encouraging them? Can we be more intentional about some of these meetings? If not in Juba, we can take, instead of bringing the meeting to Juba, take the meeting to WAL, bring everyone to our, take the meeting to Yambio. Could we do that to encourage more understanding of our country from within? Yeah. And women in politics can ask international actors to go. They can ask them, could you fund me? Yes, you may want to fund me for Commission of the Status of Women meeting in New York, but instead of that, could you just
do it here?
That and have us go, you know, have us go to the states and just talk to our women at the state level. And women politicians, you need the women at the community level.
100%.
You need them, especially if you're going for elections soon. You
Exactly.
need
I
them.
remember referendum, quite a few people would tell me the story. Referendum, they would say it was more women than anybody lined up to vote. If it was up to them, women brought independence to South Sudan through just voting. So you absolutely need women at all.
At
You
all
need
levels.
all women.
Yeah.
Okay, so after this experience of the peace talks, is that what encouraged you for now, what I see as one of the biggest phases of your life, Oxford? Is that what encouraged you?
It did. It did. I actually wrote about it in my application. I think after going through the peace talks and the peace process and coming back to support the implementation of the peace agreement. So September 2018, when the peace agreement was signed, I was working with UN Women at that time, and we're actively trying to see how do we support the gains that have been made, you know? And I was seeing gaps, you know? So for example, we'd call for the 35% quota, but there were no provisions to safeguard it. What repercussions were there if the government did not meet it? Nothing. You would write a statement, you would make noise, but
I mean, that is what happened eventually.
you know,
Yes.
you know, because we wrote statements. We made noise that, oh no, they removed a woman, they replaced a woman with a man, you know, but it just fell on deaf ears because there were no provisions to ensure implementation, you know. So I kept on asking myself, what does policy making mean? What does effective policy making look like? And I was looking at our country and I was saying, we need something, like we need an entire system overhaul. It's not about individuals. Like what governance systems are we putting in place for the future of our country? So these were questions I was thinking about, I was grappling with. And I was like, okay, it's about time I also get my higher studies, go for higher education. So with all this thinking, I started looking at different programs. I was considering the Chevening at that point, so I applied for the Chevening scholarship. And as you're applying, they ask you for 3 schools. So as I was doing my research, I knew about the Blavatnik School of Government at Oxford because I had friends go there. So I knew about it. And so I decided to just pay attention to it and just look into it. And as I was reading about it, their approach on how they use a multidisciplinary approach for the program. So they're looking at economics, they're looking at philosophy, they're looking at law, and seeing how all of these aspects fit in to build good governance, basically.
Yes.
And so the program was just attractive to me, and I was like, oh, so it's Oxford, you know?
This is what I'm doing next.
It's Oxford. So I applied for the Chevening. As I was applying for the Chevening, I also applied to the Masters of Public Policy at Oxford. And thankfully I got in, and I also got the Chevening, so I got the funding and I got the admission.
Yes.
And so September 2021, I said, let me take a break from this, because I feel like the work of peace building, it's a lifetime work, Eva.
Yes.
The work of peace building, the work of gender equality, it's a lifetime work. And at times you would feel like, I don't want to leave because I want to be part of these processes. And I remember at that time, the constitution making process was moving,
ongoing.
you know? And so it was going to gain traction. And I was like, I want to be part of this process. And so if I go to school, I'll miss this process. But I realized at times in our country, unfortunately, you take one step forward and 2 steps back, you know?
Yes.
You move and then it halts, you move and then it halts. So I said, you know what? It's okay. Let me take a break. Let me process. Because I don't think I had processed everything that had happened between 2018 and 2021. I just hadn't had that space because I was going. And so I felt like a master's program would allow me the space to step back, process, think about it all from an academic setting, see how it fits in from other countries, what could I learn. And so, that's why to me this program just seemed
very
the
attractive.
best. And it was different because I did my undergraduate in the US. A Masters of Public Policy in the UK I felt was a bit different because, especially at Blavatnik School at Oxford, the students were mainly from outside the UK. You know, I feel like if I did it in the US, 40% are more of US students and US policy, but it was more of an international program, the program at Oxford,
So
because
there was also more African people.
yes,
Okay.
more Africans, more actually. The UK students, the British students were not as many. They were not the largest, you know. Yet it's a big
Got
country,
you.
you know. So it's a very international.
Maybe
program.
because of the program.
Yeah,
Because when it doesn't apply to you, it might not
you
seem
wouldn't be
very
interested,
attractive.
yeah.
Yes.
So for me, the program was I just felt like it was the fit for me, and so I applied to it. It's the only program I applied to. I got in September 2021 we left.
I also think it wasn't necessarily a step back. Sometimes you have to get better to
Yeah.
do better.
Oh, you have to get better at your skills.
Exactly. And at that point, you had experienced South Sudan
Yes.
from a different lens.
Yes.
And now you know exactly what the environment is, and you probably know exactly what you need to come back and make it better.
Yes.
How different was the experience having gone to Yale as a young woman who has not experienced South Sudan at all, and then now going to Oxford in the UK, and you have all these problems and stress, and you were a part of conflict resolution. How different was it for you?
I felt being at Oxford was a more mature me and thinking about my country from a more intentional perspective of what policies would actually work better for South Sudan at this time, what economic policies would we need, what have other countries done, what does international law say about various issues. I would take classes on corruption. What does that look like? How is corruption fueled? Is there a certain level of corruption that should be allowed if systems are moving? If you want to create change, how do you start? Or would you create your island of integrity? You know? So interrogating this in class, different case studies, different experiences from all over the world, but also talking with your classmates. I feel like the greatest asset was my classmates from the program.
Their experiences,
yes, their
as well.
experiences, and they continue to be like not just classmates but friends. I had my wedding recently, and 4 of them came. You know,
Oh, that's
one
amazing.
from Canada.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank
you look
you.
very arusa.
Thank you. Just missing the henna, yeah? I'll go and stock it
The
up.
only thing.
Thank you. But I had classmates coming from Canada, from Italy, from Brazil, you know, just to shop. And for me, it was more of for some of them, I know it was oh, when would I come to South Sudan?
Yes.
And for them, it was a wake up in the sense we're hearing all of this in the news, but our experience is also different. Not that what is in the news is not true, but life is still going on.
Right.
People are leaving, you know.
Correct.
People are
And for
getting
you to
married.
also, I get this a lot, for you to also still have so much love
Yeah.
for that place.
Yeah.
People don't believe it.
Yes. Yes. Actually, I remember in my program, people would be I've never met anyone from South Sudan, you know? Or oh, is there life there? There are smart people from South Sudan. Oh my goodness, I've had all sorts of things. So I would, you know, when I first left home, when I first went to school in South Africa, I used to identify as Kenyan and South Sudanese. You know, I was I'm from Kenya and I'm from South Sudan. That was 17-year-old me. But with time, I was just wait, I'm fully South Sudanese. I have nothing Kenyan on me. Yes, I will always be grateful to my country of upbringing. But if I'm not proud of being South Sudanese, who will? You know, I'm just gonna shout my name, my country's name, shout my flag's name wherever I can, you know. And yeah.
So now you came back, and where do we go from here?
I would say life is about reinventing yourself.
Yes, I agree.
Life is about reinventing yourself. I feel right now I'm at a stage where I'm just also exploring Esther. Who is Esther? What are my dreams? What do I want to do? What legacy do I want to leave behind? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working for organizations. No. It's beautiful because you're also growing yourself.
Yes.
You're building your skills, you know. But I have this time at this moment where I am asking myself, what dreams do I want to, what dreams are within me that I feel need to be birthed that I haven't? Because at some point you look at yourself and you're like, I've been in school or studying or working
Yes.
my entire life and I've just not paused, you know?
Yes.
So I'm just in this transitional phase.
Getting to know yourself.
Yes.
I think that's very okay.
So I'm in that phase where I'm like, okay, what does Esther want? What makes Esther excited? And I'm also adjusting to being married. What does that mean? So at this point, I'm in that season, but I'm also keeping in touch with the networks that I've built. So in like the faith-based leaders, the Council of Churches, if they still need anything, I'm available, supporting them in any advocacy they may need. I'm up for doing trainings. I come alive when I'm around women or young women.
As final words, what would you say to a young woman that is watching this and says, I want to follow in Esther Soma's career path? What would you say?
Give your best at whatever you do. When a door opens, just give your best. Just give your best. Don't be afraid of knocking doors. Don't be forced to fit into a particular box. You know, our society may try to fit young women, especially in different boxes.
Yes.
Or you're young, or you're a woman, or you're not supposed to do this, or you're not supposed to be too vocal. If you're like this, how will your home be? You know, you will get all sorts of voices. But I would just tell her, you have a God-given purpose. And ultimately, when our time on earth is done, you will stand before God and you will answer because He gave you gifts and talents.
Yes.
Did you use them? Did you use them? And have you accomplished your God-given purpose? So ultimately, that's what counts.
Thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Eva.
Esther, this was informative, productive. I love talking to you always, and I'm happy that we caught it on camera.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Eva. Much appreciated.